All right, we are wrapping up this series, Mine. We've been talking about having a faith that is your own, not one that comes from your parents or from me or your small group leader, one that comes from your personal searching, finding out, figuring out, and diving into it. And today we're going to wrap it up, and we're going to be talking about something that I think we all deal with, but can feel uncomfortable to talk about, especially at church. Like, it's easier to do outside of church or with some trusted friends, but even inside a small group, it can feel tougher to talk about, and that's our doubts. That's our doubts that we have about our faith. And before we get started, some of you know I adopted my son in July, the end of July 30th last year, and there's us, look at that. Elizabeth, beautiful, and my son's in there, and there's me. That was when we got our family pictures. And so, to explain it to you a little bit, and I know that this isn't completely, this is a little deep dive. When we first started the adoption process, you have to go and you have to sit through classes, and you have to talk about a lot of stuff, and you learn a lot of things about the adoption process. And the first thing that I learned is it would be an open adoption, which would mean we would have contact with our son's birth parents on a regular, consistent basis. And the second thing is that they would have the naming rights. They would be able to say this is what he was named, which immediately scared me because I'm like, we're gonna get like Princess Beyonce. I was not looking forward to calling my daughter Princess Beyonce. And it was, and I'll tell you what, I was in that meeting, and as they kept going, I kept not wanting to do this. I kept thinking, why would anybody give somebody money to go through this process? Like, I have to stay connected with them. I have to go and visit them. And if they don't show up, that's okay. That's their right. But I have to show up. They're naming him or her. I have to, being consistent. I have all these background checks, all this money that I had to pay. And I was just there, and I'm just like, this is not what I want to do. I kept having doubts. I was like, I don't know if this is the smart thing. I don't know if this is the right thing. I don't know if this is what we should be doing. And it really was a struggle for me. And I was there wrestling with these emotions and being that, and again, knowing, unless I wanted to kidnap a kid, which is bad, this was pretty much my only option. So I'm like, I'm either going to go kidless, or I have to agree to this. And I was not looking forward to it. And I was having a really hard time. It was really working through a lot of that doubt and a lot of those feelings, like, is this the right thing? And obviously, we went through it because you can see that beautiful picture, but that picture, I don't think, totally shows all the frustration, pain, and hurt that happened before that picture was taken. And the thing is, and here at church, and this whole idea of doubts, that nobody really talks about doubts, especially at church. That while we're at church, we don't really talk about it. In fact, this whole, we build our Sundays around helping you know Jesus better. That's our whole goal. We want you to walk out more excited than when you walked in. So it feels weird to talk about our doubts. And it also feels like it's not okay, like somebody's going to get mad. Like if I bring up, like, oh, I think Carl's a complete loon to believe that story, that they're going to kick me out, or I'm going to hurt somebody's feelings, or I'm going to be
a total embarrassment.
A total embarrassment. We tend to struggle with this. We tend to struggle with those ideas. And how do I bring it up? And I don't know where it started, because for some of us, it was like our grandma was just like, well, we just don't talk like that. And so you're like, hey, how did they move the stone on Easter morning? Like, how did an angel come in? Is Jesus ripped? Like, what was, how did that happen? It's like, don't ask questions, you know? And we get into this mentality that we tend to think Christians don't ask questions, they just believe, because that's what faith is, right? And what we want to do, what we want to wrap up, and what I think is really important, is if you're going to have a faith that's mine, you have to have a faith where you ask questions, where doubt comes into it. Because if you never struggle with doubt, you never move forward. See, we're all hesitant to speak up about our doubts because we're wondering if we're the only one who has them. They can feel that way. And I know that all of our doubts are different, and they all come about in different ways. For some of us, we doubt if God really cares because we prayed for our parents to stop fighting, and they haven't stopped fighting. And we doubt if God really does have control because our family is financially struggling, and we prayed for financial breakthrough, and nothing has happened. We prayed for a better relationship, we prayed for opportunities, and nothing has happened, so we doubt. We hear these stories of Jesus rising from the dead, and we wonder if he has the power to do that. Why is he not showing up at my school? Why is he not showing up at my team? Why is he not showing up to engage with the people I'm trying to reach for him? And we tend to have doubts, and we look around and we talk about it, and we meet inside these groups, and we start wondering, am I the only one who has this, or feels this way, or who wonders, or is going through this? And it can be scary to bring it up, especially when we're not too sure, because I know many of you serve and you dedicate more than just an hour on Wednesday to serving Jesus. And you look around and you see those friends serving on Sunday, and you see them coming consistently on Wednesday, and you think, all right, you must just put your head down and plow through, and then eventually God shows up, right? Like, that's what we tend to think. But we all have doubts. I've had doubts. I've had moments as a pastor where I've sat down in my car and talked it out with God. And said, what are you thinking? He did not show up to answer himself, which would have been really cool if he did. But wouldn't that have been a moment, like a story? Guess what? I'm in my car. I'm really mad. And poof, here's Jesus. That'd be awesome, especially if we brought pizza. But the thing is, when we're not dealing with our doubts, it doesn't make them go away. Not dealing with our doubts, putting our head down, pretending they don't exist, trying to talk ourselves out of it, or just say, well, that's something Christians don't engage with. It doesn't make our doubts go away. It doesn't make us believe more in Jesus. It just becomes an incomplete hole in the faith that we're supposed to have. So what I want to do is spend a little bit of time, talk about a time when a guy went to Jesus with his doubts and what happened to him. And hopefully it encourages us to know that Jesus is a God who wants to engage us in our doubts. All right, so let's start it out. This is in this is Mark, sorry. This is Mark, and we'll set kind of the scene. So, what are you arguing about with them over there? This is Jesus, and so there's a commotion going on, and Jesus is, I don't know if he's over here talking with some other people, he's shaking hands, maybe he's healing some people. All of a sudden, he sees his disciples over there, and there's like a commotion. There's something going on. And so Jesus is like, all right, well, what is going on? So he goes over there and asks his disciples, what's going on? A man in the crowd answered, Teacher, I brought you my son who is possessed by a spirit that has robbed him of speech. Whenever it seizes him, it throws him to the ground. Next one. He foams at the mouth, gnashes his teeth, and becomes rigid. I asked your disciples to drive out the spirit, but they could not. So this is like the scene out of The Exorcist. There is this guy, he's walking, and all of a sudden he starts seizing, spitting, throwing, rolling on the ground, just freaking out. And this is scary. And you can, if we kind of make this real for a second, and remember that these are real people, this is a real conversation, this is a real dad with a real son who's going through real problems. And this dad has daily dealt with a son who goes rigid, foams at the mouth, rolls around on the ground, and we'll hear in a little bit, throws himself into fire, throws himself into water, on the verge of death. And you can imagine this dad going to Jesus with this son who was possessed, and just with tears in his eyes, because the kid he loves more and would do anything for is in tremendous pain, is in terrible discomfort. And he goes to Jesus. And so he continues on. So they brought him when the spirit saw Jesus. When the spirit saw Jesus, this is the demon that's inside of the boy. It immediately threw the boy into a convulsion. He fell on the ground and rolled around, foaming at the mouth. That would be the scariest thing. Now, the disciples before this, Jesus had sent them out and said, hey, I give you power. You could go and you could call out demons. You could heal people. So if you're a disciple and you're walking around and somebody's like, and you're just like, demon, get out of there. There goes the demon. And you're probably feeling good. Like you're doing it a day, maybe 2 days. People are being healed. Demons are being cast out. And then all of a sudden you get there and you see this boy and you're just like, demon, get out of there. And the demon's like, yeah. Again, this is what I want to, I'll be honest with you guys. I do not mess around like, I know people talk about Ouija boards and demons and no way, Jose. This is the dangerous, evil, demonic things. These are scary. Like if you think the haunting on Silent Hill and like that's scary, this is real life terror. I don't play around with it. I think it's unwise to play around with it. And I got some biblical proof that I think would show you that it's unwise to engage with demons. It actually goes against what Jesus teaches us. But anyway, that's a different talk. This is a scary moment for the disciples, for the crowd, for the Father. And you can imagine the disheartening realization when you're seeing the disciples walking around casting out demons, and you bring your son and they are unable to heal him. The disheartening fact of that would have just hit this father. So it continues. Jesus asked the boy's father, how long has he been like this? From childhood, he answered. He has often thrown him into fire or to water to kill him. But if you can do anything, take pity on us and help us. If you can do anything. And I love that fact that this 2 words, if you. And you can imagine, at this moment, Jesus has just heard, if you have the power, God's Son, walking around healing people, feeding 5,000 people from a little boy's lunch, doing all sorts of miracles, walking on water, calming storms, and here comes this dad who's like, hey, if you can help. And Jesus is like, if I, boom, lightning bolt, problem solved. No, Jesus doesn't do that. But you can imagine, and that's what we feel, right? Like if I were to go, if you to Jesus, then all of a sudden, boom, I would get like lightning bolt. And I would be done. But this is not how Jesus responds. And check it out. This is what Jesus responds. If you can, Jesus said, everything is possible for the one who believes. If you can. And I love that because he looks at this dad and he's like, if. But it's not a question of if. It's not a question of if. And he doesn't get mad. He doesn't say, listen, do you know who I am? Do you know who my dad is? Like, he doesn't go up to him and he doesn't say, hey, we don't talk about that. We don't say those kind of things around me. Like, and I don't know if the disciples were like, except for Judas, who were like, whoa. Because Judas was probably like, yeah. But he said, if. And I love the response. And this is the response that I want us to have as we're entering into our doubts. Immediately the boy's father exclaimed, I do believe, help me overcome my unbelief. I do believe, help me overcome my unbelief. And Jesus cast out the demon. The son is healed and reunited, and it's a powerful moment. And here's a father who said, I don't know who can, but help me. Help me get there. Help me get across this finish line. Help me make it. Help me know. And the cool thing is, Jesus wasn't like, all right, you'll see in 10 years. And which he sometimes does to us, but he healed that kid and proved his power right there and then. See, we come at doubt, and if we can kind of think of our lives and our doubt like this, we kind of come at it and then say like, oh, hey, I wonder if Jesus could heal Aunt Betty's toenail. It seems pretty green and it shouldn't be. It's kind of like these not big deals. Or like, hey, I just pray that we have like pizza tonight, and if Jesus could show up and get me what I want for dinner, that would be awesome. Hopefully he has that power. And we kind of shy away from some of these more foundational ones. Like, did Jesus really feed 5,000 people and walk on water? And is the cross, did Jesus really rise again? Is the cross a true story? Because we feel like if I take out this piece, there's the potential for the whole thing to fall over. And we get nervous, and we get scared, and we don't engage because we're so worried about keeping our tower level that we're living truly without this piece. Because we don't know, we don't trust, we don't believe. We haven't done the research. We haven't asked the question. We haven't gone the distance. So we're afraid to ask it because our tower will fall over. But in reality, we're living with a poor foundation because we haven't asked. And what I hope we do is we come to Jesus and say, I want to believe, help me. Help my unbelief. I want to know that the cross is true. Help my unbelief. So what can we do? How do we get there? How do we go from I do believe, but I don't? How do we go from I want to believe this, but I still have questions, to I want to have faith, but I still have my doubts, and I need this to be true, but I'm not sure? How do we go from there to where God wants us to be? Because dealing with our doubts is part of growing your faith. Dealing with your doubts is part of growing your faith. And so for me, remember I had my son and I had those doubts. And this is what I did. I actually read some books and talked to some people. I read Dear Birth Mother, When the Cradle is Empty, and The Eye of Adoption. And those books changed the way I thought and viewed adoption. And it brought me from, why would anybody purposely do this, to, if you don't do adoption this way, you're doing it wrong, which is an over-exaggeration, but that's what I do. And so those books, to hear a mom and birth mother writing letters to each other, encouraging and loving on each other, wrecked my heart. To be encouraged that God is still there when there's no baby there. To be talking about how turbulent times in adoption don't mean the end of it. Changed my world, answered my questions, and here's the deal. God wants to engage this with you, that faith is not about just shutting off your brain, but faith is going at it and saying, I want to believe, help my unbelief. And in our unbelief, we're still pursuing Jesus. We're still going out. We're still looking and doing what He's told us to do, knowing that God will provide answers. It's rarely in nice 3 books that show up. It's usually through a lifetime of conversation, and sometimes a moment happens when you just look back and you're like, yes, that's what that was for. And sometimes it's decades. But God answers those questions. So what do I do about my doubts? What do I do about my doubts? Jesus says this in Matthew. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. With all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. It's okay to ask questions. It's okay to dive in. It's okay to look at your small group leader and say, yeah, but... And your small group leader may go, yeah, but maybe you should talk to Carl. And I'll go, yeah, but maybe we should talk to Mark. And so we can dive in, and I want to help you search, and they want to help you search, and they don't have all the answers, and I don't have all the answers. But together we can look for the answers, and we can start going to it, because God doesn't want you to shut off your mind when you start following Him. He wants you to follow it with us. So maybe what we need to do is stop ignoring our doubts. Maybe what you need to do tonight is stop ignoring your doubts and engage them. Talk about them. And it's not always comfortable. It's not always easy. But we can get a stronger foundation when we do. Or maybe the next thing you need to do is be honest with the other person about your doubts. And we do a cool thing. We're in a small group every week. We have an opportunity to sit around and talk about it. And there's a power in knowing that you're not alone and encouraging other people. And maybe you've experienced that doubt and God showed up for you. And you have the opportunity to look across the circle and say, I remember being right there. And I remember God showing up. I remember wondering. And then somebody just going, hey, I feel like I'm the only Christian at school. Me too. And it's been really hard. But I'm encouraged by knowing I feel like I'm alone doing this, that my family's not encouraging. Oh, me too. There's power in being able to speak that and being honest with the other people around you. And what I want to drive home, that this is a safe place for you to engage in those doubts. This is a safe place for you to engage in those doubts. Doesn't mean we won't be surprised. Doesn't mean that we have all the answers. Just means that we're going to drive and figure those out with you. See, dealing with your doubts is part of growing your faith. Dealing with your doubts is part of growing your faith, and we want to do that with you. So we're actually going to head into small groups and spend some time talking about your doubts. And maybe you doubt my talk about doubts. And you can talk about that.